Hey, thanks for listening to The Pitch. If you want on the show, we can do that. 648-1051 is the call line. 648-1051. Give us a call. We'll put you on the pitch. Hey, before we went to break, I told you I had a story about the McCallie-Baylor rivalry, about those flags you see around town right in the back of trucks. So a year ago, the Baylor-McCallie game fell right at about the same time as the emergence of ISIS as an international threat. Right, two things. Okay. You did not think this was going to be an ISIS story.
I did not see the correlation, no.
So about the time of the game last year, right in that week where you've got all the boys in their jacked up pickup trucks that their parents bought them, with the big dark blue, in some cases black McCallie flag, you've got a Facebook page called the East Ridge Neighborhood Watch. Just a group of concerned citizens who all are always kind of looking out for what's going on in the community, kind of alerting people of maybe crimes or threats in the community. And a young lady in town named Arlene, I won't give out her full name, but Arlene posted in the East Ridge Neighborhood Watch something that also goes down in the lore of the Baylor-McCallie matchup. And I remember this, and some people reposted it. So this is a year ago, but she says, my apologies if this is the wrong place to ask this, but I don't know where else to put it, and it sort of creeped me out. Can anyone tell me what the black flag with a blue M on it means? On my way home, I was behind a black pickup truck in the Brainerd Tunnel with a huge black flag on a pole in the back, and when I got closer, I saw the M. He went down Brainerd, up Germantown, and eventually onto the highway at Moore Road. First thing I thought was ISIS or something like it. I looked into some search engines, but I can't find it. Asking for more information. How rich is
That's
that?
Good. I'm glad that, she's on the watch. She's doing her job.
You talk about just a responsible citizen. She was worried about that black flag with an M on it because, M stands for ISIS.
Right.
All right, John, thanks for giving us a call. You got some thoughts on UT and maybe McCallie-Baylor.
Yeah, the notion that we need to move on from Josh Dobbs, I think is ridiculous.
I agree.
We wouldn't have been nowhere even remotely close to winning that ball game last week if it hadn't been for Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs don't call the plays. He does what he's asked to do, and when he can't do that, he improvises the best way he can. I think the young man's fantastic.
The guy moves he moves as well as any quarterback I've ever seen, and I include in that the big boys, the Cam Newtons.
Yeah,
he's not as big and strong as those guys, but his footwork and his ability to make people miss and make something out of nothing, good as I've seen.
I understand, but you just a moment ago you suggested that we need to move on.
No. I didn't.
That's the greatest thing I ever heard.
I didn't suggest that. I just said people will say that. There will be people. There will be some of the cynical, what I call the cynical 20% that will. Some of them are already talking about it. I'm a Josh Dobbs fan. I like Josh Dobbs. I think he's a good kid too. But anyway, go ahead.
10-4. I'm with you on that. And another thing, a quick thing about Baylor-McCallie. It seems like that one game, that one rivalry will get, it'll get 100% more comment than anything else. And it's simply because of the culture down there in Chattanooga. You might have one or two pickup trucks in the parking lot at Baylor-McCallie. Most of the rest of them are BMW.
Hey, I understand that.
Most of the rest of them are BMW.
So where are you from? You said down there in Chattanooga. Where are you from?
I'm from Cleveland.
All right, man.
Cleveland.
I appreciate
it. There was a fantastic football game in Cleveland last night. I hadn't heard you comment on that yet.
Well, tell us.
Baylor-McCallie.
Well, now tell us about it. Now, in fairness, we don't usually cover high school football at all here, but I did happen to take a little interest in the McCallie-Baylor game, mostly because of that video that went viral on the internet.
Well, it's because you went to McCallie. That's why.
No, I said that earlier. I went to Chattanooga Christian. I went to McCallie Middle School.
Can't nobody afford $20,000 a year to go to high school, brother.
Hey, dude.
There ain't no pickup trucks in the parking lot.
I understand that.
It's BMWs and Mercedes.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those McCallie and Baylor guys do drive pickup trucks, but that's beside the point.
It was a fantastic game in Cleveland last night.
Well, tell us about the Cleveland game.
The Bradley Central and I don't know, some team from up there. I don't even know, they're playing Dobbins Bennett or somebody. Anyway, Bradley Central scored a touchdown, 17 seconds left, behind 28-27, and went for two. Didn't make it. Lost the game 28-27. But that's exactly the kind of thing that we need in Knoxville is what we got at Bradley Central High School in Damon, Florida. We need a coach with a little gumption. We need a coach in Knoxville that's got a sack.
I agree with
Jones needs to sack up. That's exactly what he needs to do.
I agree with you, John.
He's not going to get the support of his fans. He's not going to get the support of his team. He's not going to get anybody in Knoxville behind him until he grows a sack. That's exactly his problem.
All right, I hear you, man. I can't disagree with that part. You've misunderstood me a little bit about Dobbs and a little bit about Macaulay Baylor. I mean, hey, there's a lot of people at Macaulay Baylor who don't like me because I'm the guy who, as a 15-year-old, took off and thought that CCS was a good school, kind of a blue-collar private school down here in Chattanooga. And I went to public school growing up, went to public school in college, and you know what, man, it doesn't do it. There's some rich kids that go to private school. There's some poor kids that go, or rich kids that go to private school, rich kids that go to public school. Poor kids that go to private school. You got a little bit of everything. And for what it's worth, you got a lot of Macaulay and Baylor kids that drive trucks, whether he likes that or not. I mean, that's what for decades, Macaulay and Baylor kids, and maybe it's that they drive real nice GMC Sierras that their parents bought, but they do drive trucks. That's a fact. They don't drive BMWs. And that's always been kind of the Macaulay Baylor reputation is the boys like to drive big trucks. And if I am labeled as a Macaulay boy, for the car I drove the longest was an F-150. So I don't know. Anyway, my bad for dipping my toe too far into the Macaulay Baylor water, but it was just too rich last night. I mean, that video followed by a Baylor just beating was worth talking about. Now, when we come back in the next segment, we're going to talk to U.S. Senator Dean Heller from Nevada. I want to talk a little bit about his candidate before he got there because he's a public supporter of Jeb Bush. There's 6 members of the Senate who have endorsed in the GOP primary. Now, obviously, all 6 of those are Republicans endorsing in their own party's primary for president. But when you think about it, I mean, there's 4 U.S. senators, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Rand Paul, who are running for the presidency. I know Mitch McConnell has sort of half-heartedly endorsed Rand Paul. Other than that, I don't think any of the senators who have endorsed candidates that are in the race, candidates that are in the Senate. Well, that's the deal with Dean Heller is he's very strong in arguing that he thinks we need a chief executive as president, somebody who's run preferably a state. Kind of interesting because that's Jeb Bush. That's what a lot of Jeb Bush supporters argue. You got a story on Politico about Jeb Bush's kind of continued tendency to say stuff that he shouldn't be saying, especially as the guy in the race who comes from the best political stock, maybe the best political stock that any presidential candidate has ever come from. His father was a president. His older brother was a president. He was a governor. This should be fairly easy for him. He should be able to write a book about how you run for president and not say dumb things. The latest, we've not mentioned this yet, even though it's kind of the first thing on the minds of a lot of people across the country, this crazy incident in Oregon where, a whole bunch of people were killed and then others injured by a crazy person. And that's always the story, and how we deal with it we can, talk about. And I'd be willing even into the second hour to take calls, from people who've got a strong feeling here. My most strong feeling about the shootings and the continued mass shootings, it is a problem. To act like it's not a problem is ridiculous. It doesn't mean you need to take everybody's guns away, but it does mean that we need to revisit mental health issues. It means that we need to revisit how important fathers are. I argued this on our very first show a few months ago, that if you want to really get into the depths of what's going wrong in the minds of young men who decide that they're going to go on a shooting rampage and kill a lot of people on their way out, there need to be men in the lives of young men, whether they're their fathers or not, looking for warning signs, looking for people who have isolated themselves, looking for people who trend toward violence. That's how a responsible society should first and foremost deal with this. And then there may be some policy changes that can be made. But this is obviously an extremely sensitive subject. It's one that's politicized. Some people argue for good reason. The president was very quick to make his feelings known, to call a press conference. It did rub me the wrong way that he it was so amazing how quickly he had called a press conference in the briefing room to talk about this issue. And he never did that with the shootings in Chattanooga, which have national security implications, different than a shooter who it may simply just be deranged and suffering from mental issues, is not a part of a larger movement that creates a widespread national security threat as the one who our shooter here in Chattanooga had been a part of. And the president just gave those sort of very informal comments from the I think it was from the Oval Office, about our shooting here, and then he jumps in front of the cameras to promote his anti-gun agenda. I don't appreciate that. So where this comes back to Jeb Bush is that Jeb Bush, in his response, gives an incredibly inarticulate explanation of kind of what happened and how you deal with these things. And he says, sitting up on a stage being asked a question, he says, look, stuff happens, and the impulse is always to do something, and it's not necessarily the right thing to do. I got to tell you, if some of Jeb Bush's appeal is that he's a pretty normal guy and that's a surprise because he's a Bush and he likes to use common man's language, then that can work to his benefit. But you can't, in response to a mass shooting, one of several, if not dozens of mass shootings in the country this year, you cannot, as the President of the United States, respond to that by saying stuff happens. And the person who's the most steeped in presidential history, who should be the most prepared for the job on day one in a lot of ways, Jeb Bush, he's the one who keeps saying these things. He's the guy who said people need to work longer hours. He's the guy who sort of incidentally said we need to phase out Medicare. He's the guy who got into the argument. He's the one who really brought the anchor babies thing to the forefront. On and on and on. This one is probably, and there's a lot of conservatives coming to his defense saying, oh, you can't turn this into something it's not. I'm not going to argue that he had some malicious intentions or that he doesn't care about mass shootings because he said stuff happens. I'm going to argue that the guy may be too inarticulate to serve effectively as president because he's just running as a candidate right now, and he keeps doing this. If it's not deeply ingrained in him that you have to have a more methodical, more serious approach in response to issues like this, even as a former governor, don't let your response to a mass shooting begin with stuff happens. Anyway, I just didn't think that was real impressive. Now, because the show's fair, we tell both sides of the story. When we come back, the Home Rate Mortgage Interview of the Week with Senator Dean Heller, who might know a whole lot more than me, certainly knows Jeb Bush better than I do, and he's going to explain why he and his colleague from Nevada, Orrin Hatch, Nevada is an important state in this race, why they both are publicly supporting Jeb Bush. So we'll be back with Senator Dean Heller. This hour of The Pitch is brought to you by our friends at Capital Toyota. We'll be back with Senator Heller.